All right, good day, everybody. I don't know if anybody's here with us. I can't see anyone live yet. Good morning. It's morning in Nigeria from wherever you're watching us from. Good morning, good afternoon, good day in general. So it's the second day of our conference at CP Parenting Academy, and we are excited to be here today as usual. For those that were able to join us yesterday, thank you all for staying tuned throughout the session. And for those that sent in their feedback, we really appreciate your feedbacks. And today we continue again on the journey to building and raising that healthy homes for our kids. Parents as the building blocks for healthy families. And today, day two, we are going to be having amazing speakers. Our speakers are here already in the person of Shakira Omombolanle Ajijola and Nojiha Bashir, all the way from different parts of the world to come share their knowledge and expertise with us today. And also with me is Imtiaz, who is going to be the one to moderate this session. So if you are here with us, let's hear your comments. Drop comments and let's know from which part of the world you're watching us from. Let me see your comments in the comment section. If you're from Nigeria, drop Nigeria. If you're from Accra, drop any location you're currently in. Just drop it in the comment section so we can be sure where you are watching us from. So now I'll hand over to Imtiaz for her to start by introducing herself, then reading the profile of our lecturers before we start the session. Over to you, Imtiaz. I can't hear you clearly. I don't know. Is it just me? Your mic is muted. Can you unmute yourself? Your mic is muted.
Oh, sorry. Good everyone,
Yeah, I can hear you clearly now.
and peace be unto everyone that is watching currently right now. My name is Amala Asma, but my expression name is showing Jazz, but you can call me Jazz. Just a nickname too. So
I can't hear you clearly. Is it just me?
my name is Amala Asma, and I'll be your moderator for today. Okay. So just want to welcome you all once again to the third edition of CP Parenting Academy Annual Conference. Thank you very much. And before we go into the topic for today is the child's identity and sexuality, the roles of parents in a confusing world. The issue of identities and sexuality has become so broad, and everyone is just going whichever way they want, and there's just too much options to choose from, which were not while I was growing up, and it's really a confusing word at this time.
I don't know if it's just me. Our lecturers are also saying they can't hear you properly. I don't know if you can perhaps you can move closer to you move your phone closer to you or your laptop closer to you so they can hear clearly. Let's hear from other people too. Nigeria, thank you for joining us all the way from Nigeria. I don't know if you can hear our moderator. Please drop in the comment section. The audience that are currently watching us live, if you can hear her clearly, please drop in the comment section so we can be sure she's audible enough. Go
Okay,
ahead
good
and
morning
increase your
once
volume.
again. Good morning once again, and it's morning here in Nigeria. So as I was saying before, I said today's topic is your child's identity and sexuality, the roles of parents in this confusing world. That's what we're going to be talking about today on the third annual conference of CP Parenting Academy. Yeah. Okay, thank you very
So
much.
they said your voice is better now. I think you were not speaking audibly enough before. So just try and increase your volume, please.
Oh, I apologize for that, everyone. Thank you very much. Okay, so we have amazing speakers that are going to do justice and disseminate that topic for us today. And we have in person of Nojiha Bashir and Omobolani Shakira Ajijola. Thank you very much for coming. Before we proceed, I'm going to read their profiles, the profiles of our panelists before we move into the questions. So stay with me as I read them. I'll be going first with Najia Bashir's profile. Najia Bashir is an intimacy coach for women. She helps women and couples build an environment of deep, open, and vulnerable conversations and connection within their own. She's the founder of Conversations Coaching. Being a childhood sexual abuse survivor herself, she understands firsthand the effects of abuse-related trauma. Her mission is to break the taboo around conversations on body development, sex, intimacy, sexual abuse, and trauma. Najia is a most passionate woman. She is a mother of five, community language teacher, furniture innovator, and a self-taught carpenter and a DIY. Thanks for doing it yourself. She is also a public speaker and conducts workshops for women and couples on topics around relationships. Okay, moving on to the questions.
I think our moderator will be back soon. I don't know. Maybe she's trying to fix her network. Kindly bear with us. So if you can hear us, if you can hear me clearly, just drop in the comment section. I can hear you. Our audience, please do that for me, please. I think the network is trying to mess with us today, but I hope that it's going to be resolved soon. If you can hear me, please just drop. You can hear me, okay? Somebody said they can hear me clearly. Thank you for that. So let's hope that our moderator also will be clear. You can hear her soon. Can you just say something?
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you clearly now. Clearly, clearly, clearly.
Okay. I don't know if I should go over the profile again.
Please quickly read the
I
profile
should.
again. Yes,
Okay,
yes.
ma. Thank you. So I'm going to start with Najia Bashir. This is Najia Bashir. Okay. Najia Bashir is an intimacy coach for women. She helps women and couples build an environment of deep, open, and vulnerable conversations and connection within their own. She is the founder of Deep Conversations Coaching. Being a childhood sexual abuser survivor herself, she understands firsthand the effects of abuse-related trauma. Her mission is to break the taboo around conversations on body development, sex, intimacy, sexual abuse, and trauma. Najia is a multi-passionate woman. She's a mother of five, community language teacher, furniture renovator, and a self-taught carpenter and a DIY. Stands for do it yourself. She's also a public speaker and conducts workshops for women and couples on topics around relationships, mindset, and body conversation. Welcome once again, Miss.
I think your network is gone again. We can't hear. You lost us, right? I think your network is bad. Let's see. It's frozen again. I think it's your network. Let's see how it goes again. Just continue talking, continue talking, continue talking, keep talking. Can you hear me? You can hear me, right? Perhaps I'll have to just continue with the question. Since our moderators is correct, I think she's back. Are you back now? Can you say something?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Please just go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go ahead with the questions, ma'am. Uh, so, Mrs. Najia Bashir, this question is for you, ma'am. The first question. Ma'am, in your opinion, what does sexuality and identity mean? Can you please tell us in 5 minutes?
Yeah. I don't know what the audience is, but thank you very much for having me on here. Thank you very much. This is a really great opportunity. And I'd like to start off by saying Assalamu alaikum, which is peace and blessings to each and every one of you. Um, Thank you very much for the question. When you said, what is sexuality and identity? I honestly, when I was doing this, when I was doing my research, I was looking it up. And when you look at the dictionary, it's basically, sexuality is the capacity to feel sexual feelings. And when you look at what identity is, it's just the fact of being who or what a person is. So usually that is dependent on who you think who you are based on your gender, roles you play, your race, your profession. So usually when you identify yourself, you start off with, I'm Najia Bashir, I'm a woman, I'm a mother, like different roles you play. But unfortunately, today that question is a lot more loaded. It's not just, what is your sexuality and identity? Because now sexuality has a different meaning. For example, sexuality now means what is your orientation? What are you attracted towards? So is it, is it a same-sex attraction? Are you attracted to the opposite gender? Unfortunately, it even goes broader to, are you attracted to something else? Is it animals? Is it, it's just gone above and beyond. And identity, on the other hand, as well, that's another conversation in itself, because identity does not depend on facts anymore. Now there's a lot more. For example, when you look at, gender identity, there is, transsexual, there's transgender, there's transabled, transracial, there's all kinds of things that come in. And it's gone from facts to what do you feel? So I think when you ask a question like, what is identity? What is sexuality? It's such a big question nowadays that it's very hard to answer it. Does that make it clear?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, that's how I think also because while growing up, I mean, it's either he or she. The there's no transable, there's no transgender, there's no. I mean, you go on social media and you're just scrolling through your reels and you're just seeing different things and you're like, where are all this stuff coming from? Where does this even what? Where did they come about from? Where's this coming from? Thank you very much for that, ma'am. Mrs. Ajijola, can you tell us your opinion on that? Your opinion on what
Sure.
sexuality and identity means?
All right. First of all, hello everyone, and just as she said, Assalamu alaikum. So pretty much she has said everything. When you talk about sexuality, it's pretty much just a child's desire, a child's feeling of who they are attracted to, what gender are they, and then when we now move to identity. So it has two parts. There's either identity or gender identity. So identity on its own pretty much is who and what the child is supposed to be, their own role in the society, their role in a family, what responsibilities or activities or things are they supposed to, do or be when they realize that, okay, I'm a human being, I was born into this world. Who am I? And then when we have gender identity, just like she said, that is now if it was back in the day, you could always say, okay, that's pretty much either the child is male or female. But today, it's a very loaded question because the gender definitions have gone way beyond what we know, and it keeps changing every other day. Just like she said, there's before it used to be LGBT, now it's LGBTIQ. Last I heard, there's LGBTIQX. So it
Okay.
keeps changing. It keeps changing. So there's really no way to you know answer that question without having to bring in a lot of broad terms. But I hope my explanation helps.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mrs. Ajijola. I think what the main point here is we do have what there is always a formal meaning to what sexuality and identity used to be, but now we have like it's gotten more broader and more wider nowadays due to everything that's going on. Yeah, thank you very much for that, ma'am. And moving on to the next question is what is the difference and similarities or point of contention between identity and sexuality? What's the difference? Mrs. Adijala, can you please go first, ma'am?
Okay, so because of the different complexities now, based on researchers, they will tell you that there's really no different, there's no similarity between them now. There's no similarity because basically where things have changed now. So because identity pretty much means who is the child, what is the child supposed to be. That's more or less like if we're going to use under the context of self-awareness. Who am I? What makes me tick? What are my values? Those fall solidly under identity. We're not talking about gender identity now. We're talking about identity. They are two different things. If the child is, we're talking about sexuality, who is the child attracted to? I'm a girl. Do I like girls or do I like boys? I'm a boy. Do I like boys or do I like girls? So there are two separate things. There's really no similarity between the two. So in terms of there's no similarity, and those are their differences. They are two separate blocks on their own. They are not the same.
Yeah, from the definitions and from the ideas around them, yeah, there are no like similarities between them. Okay, Bashir, what's your opinion on that? What's your opinion on the difference and similarities between identity
Yeah.
and sexuality?
Yeah. I actually agree with you're Shakira, right? Or do I call you Shakira or
Anyone is fine. Shakira is just fine.
thank you. Yeah, I agree with what Shakira said because, as she said, identity and sexuality are two very different things. And as I said, like sexuality is just your capacity to be sexual, which honestly, I don't see how that is even a thing for children. Unfortunately, today we're having that conversation in regards to children, but sexuality is something that you get to as you mature. It's something like, when I was a kid, it was something that, maybe teenagers you get attracted to someone. But nowadays I have my 2 year, I'm like second grade daughter or, my second grade son coming and telling, oh, this person has a crush on me. I'm like, do you even understand what the meaning of that is? So sexuality, unfortunately, has come into the child's world through a lot of different media. Even like you have these little cartoons where the friend is, starting to love the other friend, and I'm like, no, that has no place in a child's world. The child's identity, that the way they express their love is so much pure, it's innocent, and because of that, I think sexuality does not have a place in a child's world. That's what I believe. This is my personal opinion. Now, when you come to identity, similarly, identity, as I said before, is who you are. So a child says, I'm a boy, I'm a girl, I'm a rock star, I'm a gangster, I want to be this, I want to be that. Those are things that they want to be, they identify themselves as. But unfortunately, now again, coming back to this, there's this connection between sexuality and identity coming up as sexual identity. And you have, kindergarten books talking about two mummies, two daddies, and that's where all of these questions start coming up for a child, because unfortunately sexuality is being pushed into a child's world today, and that is causing a lot of confusion. So going back to your question, I think identity and sexuality are two different things, but today, in today's world, it's being forced to be, to have connections where it didn't have earlier.
Thank you very much, Ma,
That's
Mrs.
right.
Nojiha, for that. Yeah, thank you very so much for that. Um, from what you two have said, the difference and similarities, and Mr. Nojiha has said, they have sexuality and identity has become something that is integrated now. There's no difference between the two. They are just like they've like coined them together. They've coined those two words together. Thank you very much for that. Um, we are going to move on to the next question now. Mrs. Najiha, is there an appropriate age to start identity sexuality talk with one's child? Is there an appropriate age? Is there a specific age you need to start talking about identity and sexuality to the child?
Yep. I don't believe in a certain age, of course, not babies, but once your child starts to get introduced to the outside world is when I believe we should be having these conversations. So that can be when your kid starts to watch cartoons. That can be when the child starts kindergarten. That can be when the child starts to ask questions. Because the further you wait, the world is going to get into your child's beliefs and values. And I believe, as the topic for this conference is, the parent is the building block. So if we don't interject into their world of wisdom as early as possible, the world will get into it. So if we are not teaching them the values that we believe in as early as possible, the outside media is going to teach it to them. So how I look at it is, if my child is being introduced to something at whatever age that is when I would be having a quick conversation with them. If not, I would wait for them to ask a question. So it can be, my son goes to, or my daughter goes to school at 5, when they're 5 years old, and they read a book about, different kinds of families or different identities, different genders, and then I would have that conversation. So it depends on when they're being exposed to things. And another thing is, more than these gender and sexuality conversations, I believe in having deep body conversations when the child is really young. So that, what I mean is, teaching them their private body parts when they're, learning all the other body parts. Just like teaching them a finger, you teach them their private body parts. Help them label everything. Teach them about menstruation. Let them see you taking a sanitary napkin to the toilet, or let them help you take it. So they understand body development. They understand and open up to that conversation. So they are not scared to have that conversation with you as a parent. So I think before gender and sexuality, we need to have body conversations where the child understands what body is, how the body works, and then in time get into identity, sexuality, gender identity, politics, and all of that in time when the child starts to ask questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Martina. And from that, I could pick that there's no there's no specific age to start talking to your kids. But you can start when they are exposed to the outside world, when they come back asking questions about what they are confused about, or something they have in class or in school or anything. Thank you very much for that. Mrs. Shakira. Yes. Can you please tell us your opinion about
Okay.
that?
Yes. Pretty much just like she said, you start when the child begins to become exposed to the outer world. Or basically, what I usually always tell parents is, start as soon as your child is able to speak. Once your child is able to speak, it means they can understand what others are saying. So usually that's around maybe the age of 2 upwards. And just like she said, as parents, we cannot expect our children to understand or learn everything. We can't assume. It's our job, it's our role, it's our responsibility to have these conversations with them. And you must make it age appropriate. Say a child is age 2 upwards, you start with body parts, talk to them about which parts are private, which parts are public, how their body works. You'd be amazed at what even a 3-year-old is able to understand in today's world. And then be ready to have these conversations with them when the question comes up. Like my son, the first time my son asked about homosexuality was when he was, I think, 6. There's this program that we always watch, and apparently he had noticed that there were 2 characters in the program that were male and they were in a relationship. So he asked the first time, I was like, oh, maybe they're just friends. And the third day he asked me outright, he was like, mommy, this guy is a homosexual, he has a girlfriend, his girlfriend is a man, why is it so? And at that point, I knew that, okay, there was no need to be stalling again. We had that conversation. We went online, we looked up all the different gender identities that were in play as at that time, had that conversation with him. Now, because he has sisters and he has a sister, it's important for him to also understand how his own body works and how his sister's body works. So when I was going to have the menstruation talk with my daughter, she's still young, she's still 12. But as at that time, when I was going to have the menstruation talk with her, when she asked me, I had him be in the room as well. I discussed the same thing I discussed with her, discussed with him. Showed them the sanitary towel. Most people would think, why are you showing a boy a sanitary towel? It has no link to him. It does, because it helps him understand that I am a boy. I do not menstruate. My daughter, my sister is a girl. She menstruates. So it's part of her cycle. That's what makes her unique. That's what makes her different from me. So that was one of the major things I started doing the moment he started asking about different gender roles. I would make sure that whenever I'm having a conversation with my daughter about her body, that he is also there. So the parts that he doesn't need to hear, leave him out of it. But the parts that is important for him to know about, so that he knows that there's a major difference between male and female. Those are conversations that as parents we need to learn to be comfortable with. So when a child is in nursery stage, know what conversations to have with them. Don't assume that, oh, they are not teaching my child anything in school. All they are doing is, scribbling with crayons and all that. Have that conversation with them. If they are watching a particular cartoon and something pops up, just like Nadia said, we have cartoons now where they have different variations of gender roles. And your child is a bit curious that, oh, mommy, why is this like this? You don't just wave it away. Address it immediately. Let the child know why it is that way, why it is different. And then when the child moves to primary stage, same thing. When they move to secondary school, same thing. You keep having that conversation every step of the way. Don't assume that once your child reaches a certain age, they are old enough to understand, they're old enough to understand the differences between gender. And because we have information overload now, there's a lot on the internet that children can look up. Would you rather they get that information from you, or they get it from the internet, or they get it from someone who wants to tailor their mind to believe what they want them to believe? Because remember that every child is born an empty slate. It is what we put in that they understand. So my own opinion is start as soon as the child can speak and continue that conversation every step of the way, right until when they are adults.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Shakira. That's very insightful. Thank you very much. And from what you said, it says you said that parents should start as early as possible, as early as 2, like when they start speaking, when they start talking, which is okay. And even I can say there are people out there who still feel very uncomfortable talking to their children about you know also feel uncomfortable about talking to their children about sexuality, about development in their. Well, me personally, my mom didn't tell me anything. I learned that use
Hmm.
biology and those topics in basic science. That's where I learned that from. That's why I knew
A
from
lot of us didn't
experience.
have that growing up, so it's up to us to change the narrative now.
Yes, yes, ma. Change the narrative. Yes, ma'am. That's the key. Changing the narrative. Thank you very much, ma'am. To the next question. Okay, how can parents foster a safe place for their kids to talk about things that they do not understand regarding the issue of sexuality? This is my idea. How can
Sorry.
parents create safe space for their kids to talk about things they do not understand about sexuality and identity? How can parents go about it?
Is that to me?
Yes, ma'am. This is my
Yeah.
idea.
Can you repeat the question because it was a bit crackled. I couldn't hear you properly.
Oh, okay. I was saying, how can parents foster a safe place for their kids to talk about things they do not understand about identity and sexuality?
Okay.
That's the
So
question.
yeah, thank you for repeating the question. So how can we foster that space? As I mentioned earlier, and also as Sister Shakira mentioned, like it's all about conversation, and it's about. So this is how I go about it. I go about it as encouraging curiosity and building that environment of deep conversations in the house where it is safe for you to ask a question, and I'm not going to get angry, I'm not going to get defensive, I'm not going to push your question away, I will take it up. So that can be as the kids start school, or whichever time when the kid comes and asks me a question that is not acceptable or shameful, and I don't look at the child and be like, ooh, why are you asking that question? Or I don't be like, no, you shouldn't ask that question, you're too young. Or where did you get these things from? Right? And the kid feels attacked. Instead, whenever they come to you with a question, if you know the answer, look at it from a perspective of the child. Make sure you give them an age appropriate answer. Or even another thing that I love doing with my kids is I give literally drip information, like give them little bits of information and see if they want to know more. Right? If they ask me about periods, like when my daughter, when she was, I think, around 5 years old, she asked me why I was not praying. So I said, oh, because I'm on my period. What's a period? So I said, so she's 5 years old. How do you explain periods to a 5 year old? So I said, you know how we change the oil in a car? Just the same way, mommy's body, because we make babies, we need to keep the blood, the body functioning really well because we make babies. So we have to change the blood in our body as well. So every month, the blood goes out, and then my body creates more blood, like more healthy blood. So my body is healthy. And at that point, she was happy with that. But as she grew older, there were more questions. There was another time when I was looking at menstrual cups, and she said, "What's that? It looks colorful. Is that what is that?" So I said, "This is a cup." How do you put a cup? How does that work? And then that's when I took the opportunity to teach her about the whole reproductive system of a woman and the vagina and how the cup sits inside, how you put it, all of that. And at that time, she was 8 years old, where she was more understanding of the female body. And there's nothing sexual about it. It's only when we look at it from a sexual point of view that we think, oh, that's awkward. I'm just teaching her about the body. It's a body that we were created in, and we don't need to feel shame around it. So it's basically this: when we have open conversations at the level that the child is, what can my child understand? And then foster that curiosity. Let them be curious. When they watch something, they can ask me questions. As Sister Shakira said, there was a movie where uh, there were two men. There was another movie where there were two women, and they were in a relationship. And my husband and I, we had a conversation: do we watch the movie or do we keep it away? And then we decided, you know what, we'll watch it as a family, and then we'll address it. And then when this came up, we said, okay, that is not something that we do, because in Islam, and we taught them our religious, we discussed the religious values and the family values that we believe in. And then we said, so we don't agree with that, although today a lot of media is pushing it on little kids, which is not okay. So they know what we agree with, they know what we disagree with. And the kid then the more conversations you have, they feel more confident that tomorrow, if they have another question, they're going to come and ask you about it. And it's the same thing with sexuality and identity as well, because media and school is teaching them different things. If they feel it's not something that the family values or beliefs actually supports, they'll come and question it. And that is okay. I believe my child should question things. Let them come and ask me questions so that we can have a healthy discussion. We can talk about it and then figure out, okay, what is something that our family believes in? Is this something that sits well within our values, family values, religious values, and what are we working towards?
Wow, that's very insightful, ma'am. Thank you very much, Mrs. Magia. That's very, very good. As you said, we shouldn't chase or send our children away when they come asking questions that they are curious about, because when they do not hear it from you, they hear it from the media and every other person that is willing to tell them anything that which might not coincide with your own values at home. And that's why we should, you know, accept those questions and tell them what it is, the truth. They should hear the truth from us, not from the media or every other person that just wants to bombard them with different information that are not appropriate. Thank you very much once again, Mrs. Magia. Mrs. Shakira, can we have your opinion on that one?
Okay, pretty much just creating a safe, nurturing, non-judgmental environment for your child helps them, be comfortable to ask you questions. Just like she said, you have to be able to get to that point where you do not see certain questions as shameful or as, irritating, or you feel, oh, this child is too young to be asking me this kind of questions. When you can open communication gaps, as parents, we need to learn to understand how open, let me put it that way, how open or accessible we are to our children. A lot of parents like to think that, oh, my children can come to me for anything. My children can come to me at any time. We need, as parents, to be able to ask ourselves honestly that, are we open to answering every and any question that our children have for us? So I remember years back then when we used to do advocacy for child sexual abuse. That was one of the things parents would ask during PTA meetings, that, oh, if my child is maybe 4 years old and my child is asking me why people touch their genitals, what do I do? Do I just send the child away and tell the child that that's not a conversation we should be having now? When do we have that? So that question used to come up a lot. When is it appropriate to answer certain questions that a child has? And my response was always the same. There's no little or big question that a child has. If you do not have the time to listen to them now, they would definitely ask someone else. And then when you are ready to, more or less teach them, they don't want to listen again because they've already gotten an answer from someone else. And then we also need to look at ourselves holistically as parents. How was that conversation had with us when we were growing up? So a lot of parents tend to carry the patterns they learned when they were younger, into their own parenting journey. Just like you mentioned earlier on that, you never had that sex talk with your mom. The conversation never came up. In our own side of the world, once you started menstruating, the next thing your parents will tell you is, if a man so much as looks at you, you would get pregnant. That was it. That
That
was it. That was the extent of the sex talk.
that
Don't
was
talk to
that
men, don't
that's
look
a
at them.
generic statement.
Exactly. Don't talk to them, don't look at them, don't let them hold your hand, don't even speak to them, at least for those 5 or 8 days that you are having your menstrual period. Don't. So now imagine, now your child comes up to you, your child is asking you about menstruation pads, your child is asking you about cups. You need to first of all process that information before you respond to the child. That, okay, how does this question make me feel? And am I ready to answer it? If you are not ready to answer it at that point in time, just tell the child, okay, this is an important question you've asked me. We will discuss it so and so day. And you must keep that promise. You must discuss it even when you have pushed it forward. So what does pushing it forward help you do? It helps you to process it, that okay, why do I feel this way? Why didn't I want to answer my child immediately? Then okay, do I need to get more information if I don't know how to answer this question? You need to be able to ask that question. Or parents usually have this habit of, when it comes to talks about puberty or sex and sexuality, they would share it. Say a boy comes to meet his mom and is asking his mom about masturbation and wet dreams, and she says, oh, no, 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 this conversation is not for me, and you go and meet your dad. And then they begin to push the child between each other. The dad is going, no, 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 this is an embarrassing topic for me, go back and meet your mom. Eventually the child won't ask again. For like my son is 15 now. Most of the sexual conversations or conversations around sexuality, I have been saddled with it, because his dad will tell him point blank, that's your mom's speciality, that's what she works on, go and meet her, don't come and meet me, I won't have that conversation with you. So what if I had said, okay, regardless of the training I have, I said, okay, hear it from a man, it sounds better when you hear it from a man. No, it doesn't matter who the child hears it from. The most important thing is the child has heard whatever information they need to hear from the two most important people in his or her life, their parents. Because it's what you teach them now that would stay with them. They are with you for the first formative years of their life. If we're going by our own Muslim tenets, we have something we call the 666 rule. So you play with them for the first 6 years, you nurture them and advise them for the next 6 years, and then you continue advising them over, the years going by. So say in the first 6 years, your child is pretty much with you more than half of the time, and you are saying you are not ready to have conversations with the child. You are busy working, 24/7. You're out of the house first thing in the morning. You are back late at night. Your child hardly sees you, does not have any conversation or any communication or any link with you. And then when the child is older, you're saying you want to have conversations with them, because most people tend to wait to have that sex talk or make their children comfortable to have communication with them when they are older. I've seen that happen in parents a lot. They are uncomfortable having conversations with younger children because they think, quote and unquote, they don't understand. They do understand. If a 6-year-old understands what lesbianism is, then why are you afraid to have a conversation with her about menstruation? Why are you afraid to have a conversation with her about the reproductive system? If a 4-year-old boy already knows, or even a 13-year-old already knows what homosexuality is, and you are telling him he has to wait until he's 15 or 18 before you have the actual conversation or explain to him what the gender identities are now. There are parents where they know their children come back home loaded with questions from school. Oh, mommy, they talked about this today. Oh, daddy, they talked about this today. And because you in your head think, oh, this does not align with my family values, this question is shameful, this question does not, sit well with my religion or what I think of the world, you shut the child down immediately. That does not give the child room to even come back to you another time. And that's a lot of things we've seen happen over time in cases of sexual abuse. Most of the time, the responses we always got from these children was, my parents were never available for me to have that conversation. They were not willing to listen. They would shut me down at different opportunities. The moment I asked the question, "Oh, you're too young," I say, "Oh, go away, I'm busy." You need to have time for yourself. So creating a safe, nurturing, non-judgmental, available environment for your child will definitely help your child be comfortable to have conversations with you around pretty much anything that goes on in their life.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Akira. And I had from what you said, that part where you were talking about where parents send their kids away, or where they themselves don't even want to talk about it. Or I had a similar experience maybe a few years back. That was even my mom's friend, and I think our child was going. He's a boy, and our child was going through some changes, developmental changes in his body, and he was telling my mom that, oh, our son is doing this, our son is doing that, and my mom was telling her, okay, have this talk about, what it is about development changes in his body. And she said, no, 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 you can't have that conversation with him. It just felt so funny to me. Like in this world that we are now, you're getting scared to talk to your kid about, developmental changes in his body. Like, it just felt so foreign to me.
Let me
Thank you
just
very
even
much for
quickly
that.
Let me quickly add, it's also important for us as parents to understand children's milestones. A lot of parents do not have an idea what that is or what their child does at every single milestone. Once you are able to understand that, you know the times when you need to come in and have certain conversations. And then you need to know, just like Nadia said, when to just give them a little bit and then wait until they come back. It's very important.
Share their curiosity. Yes. Thank you very much for that. This is Shakira. Moving on to the next question. It says, if a kid wants to identify as other genders, how do we go about it? If a kid wants to identify as other genders, how do we go about it as a parent? This is Nigeria.
That is, yeah. Thank you very much for that question. Now, I was like, looking at the question and wondering. Honestly, I would not wish to answer that question in a setting like this because each parent, each family, each child, what they go through, what they've been through, how they've been brought up, what they were exposed to, it's very case to case basis. And for me to give a blanket statement of, oh, if your child says this, then this is how you need to do it, would be very wrong. Now, if a child comes to the parent and says that they want to identify, I would question, what has the child been exposed to? What has the child been talking about? And one question that I have is, what are the gender stereotypes that the family has been upholding? Right? So it could be that the child, if it's a girl, suppose like she wants to play football or play something that usually that family sees as a boy thing, or the boy wants to do something that is seen in the family as a feminine thing. So is it necessarily that the child wants to change gender, or is it that the child wants the freedom of doing something that the other gender is doing? For example, many of us, like so many women that I know, when we were growing up, wanted to be boys because boys were allowed to stay out late. Boys were allowed to go out with their friends. Boys were given so much more freedom than us girls. Girls had periods, which was a big headache. Now, and that's where we come back to the conversation of like, how are you having a conversation about the body with your child? Is it positive? Is it negative? When you talk about menstruation, is it like, I just wish it'll be as late as possible for you because, it's such a hard thing. When you say that, you teach your child to dread it when it comes, right? But when you start off by saying, oh, it's a beautiful thing. Your body is such a miracle. This is how your body is. This is what your creator has created you in. And then you give them the beauty and the miracles of the body and say, like periods is a beautiful thing that helps your body stay this way. It helps you make babies. It helps you, and you teach them the miracles of the body and help them identify within that not sexuality, in that identity that they're born in, and then help them foster that love for that identity, right? And then when the child wants to do something that the other gender wants to, like, is allowed to do, how much openness can we build? How much acceptance can we build? How much tolerance can we build? And another thing is, I think, and when you look at male and female, it's not just, when you look at, like, it's not one straight line. There are women who have a lot of masculine energy. There are men who have a lot of feminine energy. How tolerant are we to that? Right? If a man walks in a certain way, from where I'm from, you would straight away tease the man saying, oh, you're such a, you look at them in that way. Or if a woman has, facial hair, you tease them. There's a lot of bullying that goes on, as it's soft bullying, which is accepted, but which is actually very painful for the other person, right? So if all of that is being endorsed in a family and then they have a gender identity issue with the child, then I think the parents need help, where they need to look at their beliefs, they need to look at what they're teaching, they need to look at what they're tolerating, how tolerant are they of things that are stretching their view of what gender is. Now, if it's the other one, as I said, it's not a, cut, one size fit all answer. It depends on what the child has been through. What if the child has been through abuse? That's a big factor. And you can't really make a full statement like that. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, wow. You did justice to it, and I was able to understand that if your child is maybe comes with that question of wants to change his gender, or maybe he's having an idea of doing that, then you need to retrace yourself back and talk about appreciation of their body and the part of their body, and appreciate it more and love it. Thank you very much for that, Mrs. Ajia. Mrs. Shakira, can I have your opinion on that question?
Okay, so she has treated the parts where, parents need to question how they've been having conversations with their children. If, to get to that point where a child now says they want to, do a gender switch. So let me look at it from the angle of what I do. So as a trauma counselor, pretty much the first things, after the parents have been able to question themselves, rather, the first thing to do is not to even shut the child down. Be as supportive as you can be, and then start explaining different things to the child. This question actually has a name. It's called gender dysphoria. So it's pretty much when the child begins to question, the sex they were assigned with at birth and the sex they feel they should be. So usually it's always best to, when you've not shut the child down, you've been supportive, you've questioned yourself, ask yourself if in any way you contributed to, helping this child get to that level where they are confused. Then you can say, okay, can we go to a hospital? This is usually always diagnosed by a doctor. They have a series of tests they run. And then another thing is, like I said, as parents, we need to be informed about a lot of things. Before your child would come to you and say, oh, I want to have a sex change, there has to have been a timeline. Usually before they, diagnose a child, as far as my research has gone, it takes more than at least 3 months plus when this child has constantly had those strong feelings that, oh, I want to have a sex change. Just like Nadia said, it might even be just on a whim that, oh, I'm a girl. If I change to a boy, I would have more freedom. I can do whatever I like with my life. No one would question me. I would have a lot of things that I can't do now, I'll be able to do. Now, growing up, maybe because I had parents that were open-minded and would explain to you every step of the way. Primary school, we used to have this friend that her elder brother was, what's that word? Effeminate. He used to talk like a girl. He would, do all these hand gestures and all that. So initially, we used to tease him until one day they sat us down after school and they were like, there's nothing wrong with him. So can you stop teasing him because he talks like you girls, or he's always doing hand gestures, or he walks like a girl? That it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with him. So that was the conversations we kept having when we were younger. They would talk to us about, girls that would wear, that would not want to wear the regular skirts or gowns as everybody else. They always wanted to wear jeans. They would try and deepen their voice. We used to call them tomboys then. And I remember my dad sat me down once. I was like, you don't call someone a tomboy. Find out first why that person wants to become a boy, or why she feels more comfortable with boys than with girls. So you need to get to that point. But going back to what I said, if the child has to have had that feeling for more than at least 3 months. If you are knowledgeable enough or you find enough information about that, then you can have that conversation even without having to get to the hospital. That, okay, for how long has this been going on? How long have you been feeling like this? Is there any reason why you feel this way? Um, what do you think being a boy would do for you? Just have a set of questions that you would be able to ask that child. That pretty much will get the child thinking that, okay, do I really want to do this sex change, or is it just that, the idea just popped in my head? You need to be able to have that conversation. You need to. Because if you don't get to that point where you can, have all those conversations with your child, then the child begins to think, oh, I can. It might even be, let's even dial it back to children will always rebel. Just like Nadia said, the parents need to be able to question themselves. How much attention am I giving to my child? Most times a child that does not have enough attention and has a lot of time to do a lot of things. Remember, there's a lot of information on the internet. There's a lot of information. So say your child is one that you are not paying attention to the child suddenly sees maybe an article about getting their parents' attention, and they say, oh, I did this, I did that, and my parents, were all around me. They wanted to hear everything. They wanted to know what was going on with my life. You need to be able to question yourself. But dialing it back, gender dysphoria is usually, it happens at least 3 to 6 months. The child should have had that strong feeling for 3 to 6 months that I want to have a sex change. The child should have, when usually when children want to start or come to you that they want to have a sex change, it doesn't happen overnight. It starts with a series of things. It might be the child wanting to wear a certain type of clothes. It might be the child wanting to hang out with a certain a certain sex. And just like Nadia said, at that point in time, as parents, you should be able to ask your child that question. Is there any reason why you like wearing this particular type of clothes? Is there any reason why you like hanging out with this particular set of people? If you have those conversations even before the child comes to you, then it makes it easier. But before your child even gets to, having that conversation with you, please, please, and please be informed. Be informed. Don't always assume that my child will never come to me and say, I want to have a sex change. Don't assume. Be ready with your own questions and with your own answers. My son is going on 9. For I think when he turned 5, he would go to my cupboard and pick out all my shoes. He would line them up and put them on one by one and wear them around the house. His dad had a problem with that. Why would you allow him wear shoes? You want him to be confused? I said, it's a phase. He will grow out of it. But his dad wasn't comfortable. He doesn't wear the shoes again now. As at that time when I sat him down and asked him, why do you like wearing mommy's shoes? You know that high-heeled shoes or, girly shoes are for girls. And he said, oh, his elder sister is always doing it, that she plays dress up with my clothes, and that's the closest sibling he has. So how else will he play with her if he doesn't do the same thing that she does? And that was it. It wasn't that big of a deal. It was just because he had a reason for doing that. He doesn't do that now. If you even offer him the shoes now, he tell you, no, I'm not interested. So you need to get to that point where you understand why your child is doing, why they are
That's the
doing what they are doing,
profound one.
yes, and why
Oftentimes,
they are asking you that question.
Can I add to that if that's okay?
thank you very much.
Yes, please.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can, ma'am.
I love where you came from, and I was just thinking, like, just as you explained, like, your son was going through that phase where he wanted to wear heel shoes. My youngest, I've got twins, alhamdulillah, so they're 8 years old now. But when he was around 7, like a few years back, he wanted to wear earrings. He said, "Can he get a piercing?" I said, "Oh, well, dude, like, get a ear piercing is like a very permanent thing on your body. So how about we go for stick-ons?" And we went to buy earrings, and he's a boy. And it was okay, so why do you want to wear earrings? It's because gangsters look cool wearing earrings. All right, fine. But we're not doing anything. My general rule is we're not doing anything permanent on your body until you're an age to choose for yourself. So until I look into this, until you're 18, you're under my care. And I'm not going to let you do anything on your body that is permanent. So especially when you look into gender dysphoria and the kid wants to go under get a surgery done or get a sex change hormone or, all the medicines and medications started, I'm against it, honestly, because I think, a child needs to be a child. A child goes through different phases. They want to be a girl today. They want to be a boy tomorrow. They want to be, I don't know, airplane the next day. And, that's just a child. So just as Sister Shakira said, like, it has to be something that has been continuous, and then you look into it and you deal with it on a case to case basis. But more than that, I think, when it comes to getting a surgery done, when it's something permanent, this is my personal opinion, where I think we need to wait until that child is old enough and has a worldview that is healthy enough to make a learned and informed decision of what's going to happen to my body, what are the side effects, how is this going to affect my life moving forward. This because so many people have transitioned when they were below 15, and by the time they're 18, they want to detransition. They're trying to go back into their actual bodies, and the kind of absurdity that is happening out there, it's just like some of the videos that I was watching. There's this couple that is, it's a man and a woman who have both transitioned. It's, the man is the wife and the wife is the man. I mean, sorry, the man is the wife and the woman is the husband, and both of them have transitioned. And the wife, who is actually a man, is trying to breastfeed a baby. And that is the kind of absurdity that the world is working towards. And I disagree with a lot of that. So in that space, how do I have this conversation? How do I support my child if that child is feeling confused? Support the child, understand the child, talk to the child, as Sister Shakira said, and keep surgeries away until they understand the heaviness of something that something like a sex change surgery. It's very permanent. Be very
Yes.
careful. Yeah.
I quite agree, because you need to, another thing to include in that conversation when your child comes up to you is consequences. Just like Sister Nadia said, consequences. If your child is a girl willing to, saying she wants to, transition into a boy, explain all the changes that will take place. She won't be able to have kids moving forward, periods would stop. Explain all the health implications, be able to have healthy conversations with your child. We're not saying, catastrophize all the consequences. Just explain it to the child in a way that the child understands what it is they want to do. You can even tell the child all of that in a day and say, okay, go and think about it. I've given you all the information you need. Go and think about it. Would you want everything in your body to change such that it can always explain to them that it cannot be reversed. That's a lot of things in, just like Sister Nadia said, in most of the videos I have watched as well, as at that time, no one explained to them that these changes are irreversible. They are irreversible. Once your uterus is removed, that's it. Once you've started down that line of injecting hormone replacement, there's no reversing it. Your uterus is gone, your breasts have been removed, they are removed. Even if they do body reconstructive surgery and put artificial ones back, you still would not be able to do what a regular woman would do. Same with men. Once your penis is removed, that's it. Even if they reattach, it still would not do the same function it's supposed to do. Have those deep conversations with your child when your child comes to you. Be able to explain to them, enlighten them that this is how it is. Because if you are trying to tiptoe around the question and you are saying, no, I don't want to have this conversation, I don't want to have this conversation, the child begins to rebel because they think, oh, they don't want to allow me live my life. They don't want to allow me do what I want to do. They don't want me to be happy. And just like I mentioned earlier on, if you feel you can't have that conversation with your child, then look for a counselor or a child psychologist. Just book a session, go there with your child, explain to the person ahead of time, okay, this is what's going on, have that conversation. I know in some countries now, it is quote unquote outlawed now that you can't have that conversation. So you would need to know how to, keep within the legal lines. I'm not saying my child shouldn't have a sex change. I'm not saying my child shouldn't transition to another gender. What I'm saying is I want a professional to explain to my child the implications of wanting to transition. I'm not changing the child's mind in any way. So that way you stay within the law. So they're not saying, no, you're having a conversation to change your child's mind. I don't support that as well. I would not wish it on anyone that, your child would wake up one morning and say, oh, I want to transition. I say, okay, sure, go ahead. A lot of these videos I've watched, these children tend to now lay the blame on their parents that they didn't explain to me. They didn't support me at that time. Nobody said anything to me. In fact, for most of the ones I've heard, especially boys that want to transition to girls, there's a network where people would give them these drugs illegally, and they're using it right under their parents' roof, and no one knows. No one knows, no one is aware. So if you need to, this is the topic. This is a question that, as loaded as it is, you have to approach it with a lot of bravery. It's not something you can just close your eyes and say, oh, let me pray it away. My
Thank
child
you
will
very
stop
much.
asking me questions. It won't happen. Have that
How?
open conversation with the child, explain consequences,
Hmm.
and then, if all else fails, allow a specialist or a professional talk to your child and have them
Word
explain
of
what
God.
you have experienced, pretty much.
Okay. Thank you very much for saying those deep conversations. I'm just here shouting wow, 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 like like a car. Honestly, we just need to go back to the drawing board and ask ourselves, why would your child come to that level? What have you been doing all this while for your child? I'm not saying that anyone is perfect though, but we need to, there are some things that must have happened, just like the Nigeria said. Some things must have happened. The child must have been exposed to some things. And like Mrs. Shakira also said, that at least it takes 3 to 6 months before any child will openly have that audacity to come to you and tell you that. So it perhaps means, as a parent, you have not been paying attention, or you have been so neglectful in some aspects, or you are not so approachable. So we need to go back to the drawing board and ask ourselves, what are the things that we need to put in place so that this conversation will not happen in the first place? Because it's like, I see it like a kind of, is a circle. So if your child understand, like and Mrs. Nadia has said, if she understand a body conversation, you start having that body conversation early enough, they will not get, there won't be confusion. You see a boy, you know that this one has a face. You see a girl, difference. You know, not to a stage the child wants to start wearing hijab, or say she wants to wear your to put on that, just a face. Don't get threatened. Don't feel like, don't go into your flight mode like, wow, to this, my child will turn to that. Just and try and assist them through that phase. Thank you all for submitting that. We have a question here. Somebody is saying that, if, let me try and display the question on the screen. Can you see that? The person is saying that, so what happens now? So now you have told your child that there are consequences for this that you're trying to do. Then the parents, the child now say, even if there's consequence, I want to do it. That's me. I'm now old enough to decide for myself. How do you think we should go about this? I'll go with Nadia first before we go with Mrs. Shakira.
Yep. So if the
Can
child
you
is
hear
school,
me?
yeah, I can. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I think
Oh, okay. All right, not a problem.
I can hear you
Um,
now.
okay, cool. So as I said earlier, see, if a child is cool with the consequence, even then, I would not support the child getting any permanent surgery done on their body until they're at least 18. Where, especially this comes from, oh, I think she's gone. Can you still hear me, Shakira?
Yes, I can.
All right, beautiful. So I personally, I think, like as I said, and this is coming from a religious space as well, where because I wear hijab, I'm a Muslim, and I believe I have the rights of taking care of the child who is under my responsibility. When I take care of the child, I make some decisions where I would say, no, 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 you can't get a sex change surgery. Now, I know this is illegal in some countries, so you have to tread very lightly on this because, recently there was a case where a father was, imprisoned because he was against his son. I think it was a 6-year-old or 8-year-old child, started off on hormones because the dad said, there's nothing wrong with the child. It's just that the mother wanted a daughter and was, kind of pushing the boy towards being a girl from the time the baby, when the boy was born. So when the child was 8 years old, the child identified as a girl because that was how he was always raised. So the father spoke against it and he got imprisoned, and he was actually, he had to flee the country for his own safety. So be careful for yourself. But at the same time, as much as possible, me as a parent, I would not support my child getting any sort of permanent surgery until the child is of a mind. So let's look at brain studies. When you look at brain studies, it says it takes, the brain is fully developed when the person is around the age of 25. So, when the child is 6 or 7 or 8, the brain, forget being developed, it's in its infantile stage, where the child is in no shape or form ready to take a lifelong decision. You would not let the child smoke, you would not let the child drink alcohol, you would not let the child vote. So how come you're letting a child take such a big decision of changing or cutting their body? Right? So I would, as much as possible, delay it. Now, after 18 years old, if the child still goes ahead and wants to do the sex change, that is between him or her and the creator. And then there's this whole dynamics of how do I relate to the child if the child does something. That is, again, a case to case, according to each family, how their beliefs are, how they would do it. Now, I would always support parents never cutting ties with a child, always supporting them through what they're going. Sometimes even after someone does something, like even like a surgery, they still detransition, they still want to come back. So look at it from a case to case basis. But at the same time, if the child still, if going back to the question, if the child is cool with the consequence, I would still wait till the child is old enough to take such a heavy decision.
Thank you very much for that. Miss Shakira, what do you have to say?
Okay, so if the person is saying if the child is cool with the consequences, I would like to dial it back. How was that conversation had with the child at the moment the child asked the question? How did you answer the question? In what way did you communicate to the child the consequences and what they want to do? Did you explain to the child holistically that this is a major life change? It's not a minor change. So the thing with a lot of us as parents is when the child comes to us with just one problem, we do not look at all the other moving parts of that problem. We just address only that one problem. My child wants to have a sex change. So if it's a child where, in the previous question, you do not have an environment where the child feels free to express him or herself, those kind of children turn out really rebellious, and when you are telling them, they're in their mind, they're like, I don't care. Doesn't matter. So long as this thing is going to hurt my parents, so long as it makes them uncomfortable, so long as it makes them agitated, I am willing to do it. At that time, the child is not thinking of the consequences. So the parent needs to find out, how did you have that conversation? Also remember that there's something called peer pressure. People like to think that peer pressure only occurs when a child is, between the ages of elementary to high school. Peer pressure happens throughout our lives, throughout. So say imagine you have a child that is a 12-year-old and the child is insisting, I want to have a sex change. Have you found out why the child wants to do that? Does the child want to do it to belong? So if you are saying the child is cool with the consequences, like I said, I like to take things apart. How did you have that conversation? Did you touch on all the important parts that lead up to that question? The consequences, does the child want to fit in? Where is the child's mind at that point in time? Just like Nadia said, the brain doesn't fully mature until you're 25. And you are talking about a child that is maybe 5 or 6 or 7 or even 10, 12, 13, telling you they want to have a sex change. Have they fully thought it through? And then more importantly, like I mentioned earlier on, has this child been exhibiting this behavior for more than 3 to 6 months? It depends on how you have that conversation. So I can't really answer that question in totality without knowing how the conversation was had. And let's even say, for the sake of argument, the conversation was had holistically and the child still wants to go ahead. Just like Nadia said, it depends on your religious beliefs and your values. For me, I would not accept. I would tell the child, you are my responsibility until you turn 18. So we can leave this until you turn 18. When you turn 18 and that's what you want to do, then that's between you and your creator. And just like she said, in countries where it is illegal to, to disagree or to tell your child that it is not possible, also know how you want to fit between the lines. And just like she said as well, keep your heart open. Children will be children. We've all growing up, all of us heard the story of the prodigal son. Children would always do what they want to do at that point in time based on how mature or their maturity level. So later on, when they realize their mistakes and they want to come back, please, please, and please keep your heart and your arms open. Don't judge. Just keep your heart and your arms open. Be willing to listen to them. There's nothing like, oh, I told you so. Didn't I tell you then? And you were not willing to listen. Just keep your heart and your arms open. But if the child is still okay with it, then that's my own take on it.
I think both the moderators are offline.
I think network it's raining here today, so network is come and grab it, touch and go. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just, when you were saying that, just to keep the conversation going and to add to your topic, what you shared, a few, I think a year back, my oldest son, he had come home and asked me, Mom, what is transgender? So I said, like people wanting to change, if it's a boy, they want to change to the girl, the other gender, or if it's a girl. So we had that conversation and he said, oh, so are we allowed to do it? And that's when I had the family values, beliefs conversation where I said, this is how I look at it, right? From a religious point of view, I believe the creator is perfect. How I look at it is when the creator creates, he creates in the perfect way. So he knows he is the best of planners. He knows what to create. So when he creates a child as a boy, he has planned for that person to be a boy. And when we try to transition or change sex to the opposite gender, it is like turning to God and turning to the creator and saying, you know what, I think I know better than you. And it's me challenging the creator. Now, this is when he was 10 years old, and for his brain to understand, it was a very watered down conversation. Now, there's other sides to it, like what about the intersex, and what about people that have disabilities, people that don't have are born without certain limbs. That is a different conversation where you are allowed medical intervention in, for yourself, for your body, to fix a body part. All of that is allowed, and intersex is a reality. There are some people who are born with both the chromosomes, but again, I feel gender is a fact. As J.K. Rowling said once, gender is a fact. If you are born with XY chromosomes, you're a woman. If you're born with XY chromosomes, you're a man. And if you have XX chromosomes, you're a woman. And then doesn't matter transitioning you do, that is not going to change. Right? So that is, again, going back to that drip feeding conversation of give them what they can accept at that time in their life. And then, in today's world, the conversation is definitely going to happen again. They're going to come back and say, but you know what? The media says this. You know what? Google says this. We have this funny way of addressing Google. We say, Professor Google, because Google knows everything. But yeah, and then it's to look at Google and think, but Google is also being written by someone. And what is that person thinking? So it's not just because it's on Google, it's not the truth. You have to learn to question the internet, the sources of information that you're coming. Even question me. That's fine. I'm not question as your mom. Question me as well. But let's get to an understanding where you find the answer that you find acceptable.
Of course. Yes, I think one of the terminologies they even used then was there's something called drag queens. My 9-year-old, when he turned 6, he used to ask that question a lot. That okay, if I can't change into a woman, that I know of some men that dress as women. Is it possible for me to do that? And we had to have that conversation that In as much as yes, they are not doing the actual sex change, there are complications and there are consequences to wanting to dress like that.
Mm.
So when I had the conversation with him, drip conversation like that, and I realized that he has had conversations either in school or with his friends, and he knew way more than he was letting on. And then he mentioned, this popular cross-dresser in, I think, the UK or US, RuPaul. He mentioned him and he was like, oh, that he has a friend that watches it and is always talking about it. I was like, okay. So I went on Netflix, watched the episodes, and then looked for the ones where most of these drag queens had breakdowns during sessions and explained how their journey got them to where they were and how they became cross dressers. So I looked for one episode, we sat down, we watched it together, and I was like, that it's like as if they are sad. I said yes, they are, because a lot of them are doing this because one of the narratives that kept happening over time was a lot of them did this because at that point in time they either did not get the attention they needed when they were younger, or they were pretty much shut down all through their lives, and maybe the first or the second or third person that gave them attention was tended towards that line. So we had that conversation. He watched maybe one or two episodes and I was like, oh, do you still want to be a drag queen? He said, I don't think so. I don't think so. You have to, and that's why most people will say, why are you allowing the child to watch that kind of thing? You are giving him the wrong impression. No, let your child be aware that these things exist. Let the child be aware. And when the child is being aware that they exist, be right there beside them to guide them every step of the way. It's just like the film you said you watched with your family and you had a conversation about it. Most parents will tell you, no, no way. I'm not doing that. I'm not going to have that conversation. But we forget that even the simplest of cartoons now have gender roles displayed openly in it. And it's not all the time you would watch a cartoon with your child and say, oh, okay, I want to be there. So if we're not having those conversations with them or even explaining to them or letting them be free to, ask us all these tough questions, then even if we say we are religious or even if we have values, if we do not allow our children to get to that point where they can question those values or question those beliefs, then we're not giving them room to grow. And we're more or less opening the door wide, we're keeping the door wide open that, what, go and ask other people. I remember I went to a program, I think that was last year. So it was to represent an organization that I work with. And when I got there, at first I was wondering, oh, okay, these people are dressed weird. Maybe it's a thing. And then I realized that it was a conference pretty much tailored towards LGBTIQ individuals. I was the only hijabi in the room, the only hijabi. And then along the line, they had the conversations. I had people come up to me, oh, I like your outfit. Oh, you look so beautiful. And in my head, I kept wondering until I realized that was what the conference was about. So fast forward to, halfway through the conference, they had something called a living library. And there was this boy that I sat down for his living library session. He said he grew up in a Jehovah Witness family, strict Jehovah Witness. He said they had prophesied about him. He was going to be a great man. He was going to be, a prophet. And he said somewhere along the line, he began to have these feelings that he thinks he likes boys more than girls. He spoke to someone and the person told him, no, we're going to have to pray this thing away. That's what that quote unquote, that's the term they always tell them, pray the gay away. And they took him to different church sessions, different revival sessions, had prayers. It was during one of those, going from one church to the other, that he met someone that was gay. And this person then introduced him to a community. And he more or less joined the community. And at that point, he was still having issues with them at home. And the person encouraged him that, what, come out to your parents, come out of the closet. He said he came out, he explained to his parents that he had gone on different prayer sessions, he had gone on different fasting sessions. They were like, no, you did those ones without telling us. We will take you for our own sessions. He said none of them sat down to ask him why, or what happened, or what changed his mind, or how he got to that point where he felt it was boys he liked. All they were concerned about was, let's pray this thing away. We need to pray this thing away. And eventually, he said he moved out of the house. He lives in the community now, in the gay community. And when he finished the story, I was curious and I asked him, I said, okay, so what is your relationship with your family like now? He said, I have a community of people that love and accept me for who I am. They don't question me, they don't judge me, they don't ask me any questions. So I'm comfortable with them. That maybe sometime in the near future I might still have a relationship with my parents or my family, but right now I'm happy where I am. And I asked him again, I said, okay, in terms of religion, do you still have that personal connection with God? And he said no, that at some point in time they had showed him about how the Bible and the Quran came into being, and that he has looked at it from all angles, and he believes that there is no God. So that's pretty much one individual totally gone already. And he has a community that is extremely supportive right behind him, guiding him every step of the way. So that's why I like telling parents that our work is very much cut out for us. If we cannot be as supportive as these communities, then we would continue to have this battle every step of the way. Every step of the way. Sister Shakira, this is a conversation we can have for as long as.
Thank you very much. It has been amazing. It has been amazing and awesome. Thank you all for answering that question in the best manner. Honestly, we just need to be supportive. I know it's going to be hard. We are not praying, we're not wishing for this to happen, but it can happen to anybody. That's the reality. It can happen to anybody. So just be prepared. Raise yourself up and know that when it happens, you can still support. You can still, when you say support, like Naji has said, it's not about you being in agreement with what they have chosen to take. At least when they are 18-year-old, even I think from the Islamic wise, even before 18, some of them are already responsible. So when we go that line, we can also know that at some age, even before they get to 18-year-old, they are already responsible for their actions. So when we go the Islamic or the Islam, our religious view right. So let's just know that along the line, things will happen. Our kids might decide to question things different from what we have taught them. But the way we open up to them, the way we give them that non-judgmental and safe environment will allow them trust our guidance and our support. So thank you all for doing just. We have just 3 minutes before we end this session. I don't know if there's any question again, so we can see and just round it up. But while we're waiting for questions, perhaps somebody will drop a question in the next 3 minutes, 4 minutes each. What's the final states? What you have for our audience in terms of parents, sexuality, and the topic in general? I'll go with Najiha first.
You were breaking up a bit. Did you say final words to how a parent can support? Is that the question?
You should go first then. The question, the parting word from you for the audience regarding all that we have talked about today.
Yeah, sure. I think as a parent, we have 3 roles to play, right? So moving forward with our children, there are 3 roles to play. One is the protector, second is the teacher, third is the guide. Protect your child from media, from cartoons, have that conversation, tell them what we accept in our family values. Like when you're watching cartoons, like for example, with my kids, I tell them we don't watch cartoons that have love in it because, for kids, I believe boy, girl, or, that kind of sexual love is not for a child. So if there is love, let's not watch that, which is very hard. A lot of cartoons have it. But now my kids have started doing that on themselves, like where they see love and they say, oh, okay, there is, that's not friendship, so we're not going to watch it. So we've had that conversation from the time when my kids were 3 years old. And be their protector with what they're being taught at school. Learn, understand what they're being taught. Be very proactive. Talk to the teachers. Talk to the management. Understand what they're teaching, and be there to protect them from unwanted stuff. Like for example, like small kids are being taught how to use a condom. I mean, that's not something a student in year 2 needs to know. That is something maybe higher up. Yeah, definitely, let's have that conversation. But be that protector. Again, be the protector when it comes to social media and access. If a child in grade 3 has a phone, I would blame the parent. Why does your child have a phone at that age? Why does the child have free internet access when the child should not be having any device, right? So look at how you're restricting social media. Is your computer in a space where it's open? The child cannot access something inappropriate. So all of that, how are you protecting your child? Now, moving on to the teacher, have those open body conversations from the time the child is able to understand, as Sister Shakira said, from the time they start to speak, from the time they can understand those kind of concepts, and keep it going, like, starting from body parts to menstruation, sex, pornography, which is a very big topic. Address it in your houses. Talk about masturbation. Talk about how to, how to go to your wife or how to go to your husband the first time you get married. You have this you're teaching your kids, do not look at men, don't look at them when you're menstruating, you'll get pregnant, all of that conversation. And suddenly you get married and you're expected to just, take your clothes off. There needs to be some kind of a buffer. Like, have those conversations, talk to your kids, and then teach them about family values, religious values. What do you believe? What does your family stand for? What does your religion stand for? Again, teach them tolerance. As I said earlier, the male and female is not just one straight thing. There is spectrums in masculinity and femininity in both genders. Are you teaching your child tolerance, right? And then thirdly, as I said, be their guide. Encourage curiosity, encourage deep conversations, guide them through their beliefs, guide them through how they see the world. Be their eyes and ears and mouth for them to build that kind of holistic view of the world, understand what is not healthy, understand what is healthy, resourceful, unresourceful. And another thing that I do very much with my kids is today's gender politics. Because we're talking about gender politics, I talk very openly about the absurdity of how terrible some things are. Like, a man wants to identify as a baby. Talk about those kind of things. Let them laugh at it, that's fine, but teach them that kind of absurdity and how unhealthy this, how this whole thing is going. What is it going towards? Talk to them about pedophilia. There's so many groomers online, people who support all of these LGBTQ, all of that. There's another side to it where people are supporting pedophilia, where they say, well, if a person is interested in children, well, they should be allowed to. No, that's pedophilia. Talk about those things. Guide them to be safe with their body, guide them how to use the internet, talk to them about grooming, about strange men or women talking to you and asking you to send certain pictures to them, right? Because you cannot hide from this topic anymore. All the topics, it's in everything. And the only way, 20 years from 20 years in the in the past, this was not a problem. Today, this is everywhere. So if you don't talk about it, everyone else will. And if you don't talk about it, your child will get all kinds of ideas that do not support your family values and your belief system. So if you're not teaching it, beware. So, as Sister Shakira said as well, talk to them. Just keep talking to them, support them, accept them, acknowledge them, validate them. Build that space of safety and trust and deep conversations in your homes. And then, let them bring that curiosity in. Right. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. That's so powerful and profound. Mrs. Ajijola, what do you have, Sister Shakiro?
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, she
Very
has,
powerful.
yes. So pretty much for me, a parting word would be involved. Be involved not only in your child's life, be involved in the school your child goes to, be involved with the friends your child relate with, their social circle. Be involved with the community your child is in. Be involved with your child's health. Just like she mentioned, male and female gender has a lot of people on the spectrum. There are some ladies that have a high dose of testosterone in their system. Same with men too. Once you are involved in all the different parts of your child's life, it gives you an insight into when things begin to go wrong. It gives you an insight into, when to step in and when to let the child figure it out on their own, or when to give them, little bits of information and then let them come to you. The second one is keep an open mind. Don't operate or communicate with your child based on the patterns you learnt growing up. Don't use the same method that was used to parent you, that has given you both positive. Don't no, In fact, let me put it this way: do not operate with the negative patterns you learnt growing up, or the negative parenting that was used on you. Do not use it on your children. Have an open mind whenever they come to you with any kind of question. The next one is don't judge. Don't judge. The easiest way to sever lines of communication with your child is to constantly keep judging them, to keep picking at every single thing they bring to you. They would not answer you or even speak to you again. Once they know that, oh, this is what my parent does, they would only come to you with the seemingly irrelevant things. Do not judge. Do not judge. The next one is arm yourself with as much information as you can. As parents nowadays, with the way sexuality and gender identity keeps changing, you need to arm yourself with information. Just like Nadia said, gender politics is something every single parent must be involved in. You need to keep checking the news. You need to keep updating your information so you know what to tell your children part time. I was having a conversation day before yesterday with my 15-year-old, and we're talking about different genders, and is he aware that there's now a new gender identity out again? He was uncomfortable. He didn't want to have that conversation. But one or two things he told me already informed me that he knows about it. He has had this conversation with friends. It is a discussion we are still going to have later on. But that was the first tester, just to be sure that he's aware of what is going on. So it doesn't look like as if I don't know, or I'm pretending not to know. So at least I know now that the next time I'm having that conversation with him, I would now know how to tailor it towards our religious values, towards our family values. You have to start from somewhere. Be informed as much as possible. And then the last one, which is the most important, is be able to have open, heart to heart, deep conversations with your child. Have it. It is extremely important. Don't feel, I can't talk about this. Oh, this one I can't say. And never assume that your child does not know anything. Never assume. If you're unsure, just like I mentioned a few minutes ago, ask them maybe a little leading question just to know whether they are aware of what is going on or not. And then if they are, then you begin to have that conversation at once. Then the most important one is, as parents, once we are armed with information, please do not bombard your child with it. I'm sure Nadia has said this like a million times over. Do not bombard your child with all the information you have gotten at a go. Whether it is sexuality, whether it's pedophilia, whether it's lesbianism, whether it's transgender, have that conversation in bits and pieces. When you bombard a child, basically what you have done is, give or take, maybe by the first five sentences, you've lost them. They'll just be nodding and be telling you, oh yeah, yeah, When you are done, they would only pick the important ones. Okay, mommy, you've told me that being transgender is wrong. Being transgender means I'm probably sinning against God, depending on what religion I belong to. Being transgender means that people might not want to talk. They will only pick the little ones, or the things they feel you want to hear. So please have that conversation part time. Don't bombard them. And more importantly, remember that these children are our responsibility, and they come to us as empty slates. It is what we put in them that eventually brings them to the questions they have. So say you are writing on a slate, you are teaching a couple of students. At time to time, you will turn back and ask, do you all understand? So I would like us as parents to put that into our parenting. As you are writing on your child's empty slate day by day, you should also be ready to answer any questions the child has, or be able to pause at different times of that child's life and ask, do you understand? Do you understand what I'm saying? Do you understand where I'm going with this? Don't just keep, pushing through a child's life. So that's
Thank
about
you
it
very
for me.
much. That was profound. Thank you very much for joining us. I really appreciate your time here. It has been an amazing session. I've learned a lot personally, and I believe that our audience has are also picking their own parts too. Don't bombard your child. Don't say because you have now heard about all this information now you want to now expose your child to it. Ask question in bits or wait for your child to ask question. See how much they know before you go further to feed them based on their age. Age appropriateness is key in all that we do. Thank you all for joining us. Najiha, thank you. Shakira, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time. I've had an amazing time now. So our audience, we're going to be back here again when it is 3 p.m. to have a session on father. The topic is going to be fathers as building blocks in the family, active or passive. So if you have we all have male in our lives now. So please encourage the male to join the conversation. We can't do this alone. Mothers can't do it alone. We have been given the responsibility of parenting. It takes two to tango, and it takes two to build a family. Of course, it can be one person that is more active in the family, but we always need their support. So please encourage the male in your family, in your lives, your brothers to join the conversation. We'll come again by 3 p.m. We'll have the conversation. Thank you very much, Najiha. Thank you very much, Mr. Shakiro. We'll see you again by 3 p.m. You can leave now if you are pleased to. Thank you very much. Bye. So, audience, we are going to be meeting again by 3 p.m. Remember to drop your comments, tag somebody to this session, and we are going to have an amazing time by 3 p.m. again. Bye.